It's yet another edition of your flagship geopolitical program on Amogate Radio Communications, Sports and the Geopolitical Economy. It's my pleasure to be your host. I'm Abiodun Abari, and you're most welcome. Yes, the current escalation in the Middle East is dominating the geopolitical space amidst the ongoing United Nations General Assembly. Recall that following the incident of October 7, 2023, when Hamas attacked Israel and causing death and destruction as well as taking hostages, Hezbollah, another Iranian proxy in the axis of so-called resistance or terror, depending on which side of the divide that you are, or through which prism you decide to view these geopolitical interactions. Hezbollah attacked Israel on October 8th, the following day after the Hamas attack. Hezbollah fired guided missiles and artillery shells at Israel in the occupied Sheba farms as a follow-up to the previous day attack by Hamas, and some sort of solidarity, which is not far-fetched, since the two organizations have the same sponsor in Iran. And so much talk about who pays the piper, telling the tune. And of course, Israel responded by using drone strikes and artillery shells on Hezbollah positions near Lebanon's border with Israel in the Golan Heights. And over 90,000 Israeli civilians have since been evacuated or forcefully displaced as a result. And on the other side too, over 100,000 individuals in Lebanon have been displaced as a result, with Hezbollah insisting that it will continue to attack Israel until the Israeli Defense Force stops the military operations in Gaza. And between 21st October 2023 and 20th February 2024, about 8,000 incidents of artillery shelling has been undertaken by Israel against Lebanon. And Hezbollah has also undertaken about 1,000 incidents of artillery fire against Israeli positions. So the current escalation, however, started with the pager attacks conducted by Israel. Earlier in February this year, Hezbollah decided to address the failures in the group's intelligence structure by instructing their fighters and supporters to ditch their phones in favor of pagers. All right, after over 170 fighters, including a senior commander and the top Hamas official, had been killed in targeted Israeli strikes in Lebanon. Right. So, in fact, in the televised broadcast on February 13, 2023, the Secretary General of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, warned that their phones were more dangerous than Israeli spies, and that supporters and fighters should break, bury, or lock their phones, lock them up in an iron box. Okay, obviously this was to undermine the Israelis' foreign spy agencies, that's the Mossad, penetration of Hezbollah intelligence. So, as an alternative, Hezbollah decided to distribute pagers to its members, fighters, and medics working in its medical and relief services, after ordering 5,000 beepers made by Taiwan-based Gold Apollo. And the model being the AR-924. Unlike other pagers, the AR-924 can receive and display text messages wirelessly, but cannot make telephone calls. And this will hamper the location tracking by Mossad. So the pagers attack Tuesday last week was a high-level, unprecedented breach of Hezbollah security and intelligence, and saw thousands of pagers exploding across Lebanon, killing 12 people and wounding about 3,000 others, which included fighters and Iran's ambassador to Beirut. Surmises have been made as regard how this unprecedented operation was actualized. It could be that Mossad infiltrated the supply chain and planted a small amount of explosives inside the Taiwan-made devices months before the detonation last week. That is, it's most likely that the pagers had been modified during production by the infusion of an explosive device that has the ability to receive a code to activate or occasion a detonation. So this explosive material, which could be weighing up to 3 grams, is likely to be undetectable or undetectable by any tool or scanner. Right. So this represented the ability of Israel to infiltrate its rivals in such a remarkable and dramatic fashion. And footages obtained showed the wounded having serious injuries to the face, fingers missing, gaping wounds around the hip area, which of course where most pages are worn. Right. And the following day, being Wednesday, at least 20 people were killed and over 400 injured after dozens of walkie-talkies exploded in Lebanon. Hezbollah admitted that 16 fighters were killed. However, Lebanon's communications ministry has said that the ICV-82 radios were no longer in production as the model has been discontinued by the Japanese maker as an icon a decade ago, and that the ones that exploded have been supplied by a non-officially licensed, unrecognized agent and was not vetted by security. So people in Lebanon, as a result, are now nationally scared, right, to use everyday communication devices as a result of this twin attack. That's the pagers attack and the walkie-talkie attack. Actually, put fear people in Lebanon, and people are shutting off their Wi-Fi routers and taking up batteries from their devices as a response. And the Japanese company too that manufactures the walkie-talkie, that of course has been discontinued, ICOM, has insisted that its radios are produced in Wakayama Prefecture and under strict management to ascertain that only parts specified by the company are used in production, okay, and that manufacturing is done locally at the same factory and never abroad, never outsourced. All right. So the statement from the company said the ICV-82 is a handheld radio that was produced and exported, including to the Middle East from 2004 to 2014. It was discontinued about 10 years ago, and since then it has not been shipped from our company. End of quote. In saying that the production of the batteries were also discontinued, the company affirmed that, and I quote, a hologram seal to distinguish counterfeit products was not attached, so it is not possible to confirm whether the product shipped from our company. End of quote. Israel has not officially claimed responsibility for these attacks, but Iran, who had its envoy to Beirut, who is Mojtaba Amani, wounded in the pager attack, had stated through a letter by its mission to the United Nations that, and I quote, Iran will duly follow up on the attack against its ambassador in Lebanon, which resulted in his injury, and reserves its right under international law to take required measures deemed necessary to respond to such a heinous crime and violation. End of quote. And the United Nations Secretary General and the Security Council must condemn unequivocally Israel's terrorist action, heinous crime against the head of Iran's diplomatic mission in Lebanon, as well as violations of Lebanon's sovereignty and territorial integrity, and attacks and targeting of Lebanese civilians, all right, as said by the Iranians. Okay, so I have always advanced that sovereignty and territorial integrity are concepts in the realm of political idealism, and that political pragmatism or realism pays lip service to these concepts and connotations. A good case is the Russia-Ukraine conflict, where Russia practically breached Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity to proactively and reactively protect its own existential interests, usurping and undermining Ukraine's ability to pursue its own foreign policy by insisting that Ukraine cannot and must not and should not join NATO. Yes, and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has stated the objective of making northern Israel safe for people to return to their homes by decimating or obliterating Hezbollah. And as a result, Israel followed up the twin attacks of the pager and walkie-talkie by striking the southern suburbs of Beirut on Saturday, killing 14 people, including senior Hezbollah commander Fuad Shakir, and wounding 66 others. Then overnight on Sunday, the Israeli military launched 400 attacks on Lebanon, while Hezbollah responded by launching rockets at the Ramat David Air Base near the Israeli city of Haifa. And the Iran-backed Shiite militants in Iraq also launched Al-Aqab missiles at Israeli bases with no reported casualties. As it is instructive to reiterate that, as a matter of indisputable fact, the Houthis in Yemen, Hamas in Palestine, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and the Shiite militants in Iraq are Iranian proxies and are fully sponsored by Iran. Alright? So this brings to the fore the argument that there was relative peace in the Middle East during the Trump's US presidency because of sanctions placed on Iranian oil. Trump even went ahead to threaten China with a 100% tariff on Chinese goods coming into the United States if China patronized Iranian oil. And even Trump's fracking policy ensured that the supply glut kept oil prices low. So Iran could not practically fund this process when Trump was president. Then the Biden-Harris administration, however, removed these sanctions, and Iran has since made over $800 billion in oil sales and been able to fund their military proxies, with Hezbollah attacking Israel and Hamas too attacking Israel on October 7, 2023, and the Houthis causing significant disruptions in the Red Sea and the Suez Canal. And the Shiite Islamic militants in Iraq have launched a series of attacks on U.S. positions in Iraq. And Trump was able to achieve the Abraham Accord in 2020. The Abraham Accord highlights the common belief of Judaism and Islam in the Prophet Abraham. Right. And so with UAE and Bahrain and Morocco and Sudan signing peace treaties and normalizing relations with Israel, that's a first since Egypt's 1979 and Jordan's 1994 diplomatic recognition of Israel. So my position has always been that as the world is configured today, the occupier of the White House in the U.S. is the biggest influencer of world peace, with a defense budget of over $800 billion and over 750 foreign military bases and myriads of military and intelligence assets around the world. The U.S. president can incentivize or disincentivize world peace as dictated by foreign policy choices or direction. So my point is that the recent conflict in the Middle East was avoidable with a proactive foreign policy, or by just maintaining the Trump-era foreign policy in the Middle East, especially as it pertains to Iran. So as this stands, the Biden-Harris administration, which expires in January 2025, will just be kicking the can down the road for whichever administration succeeds it, whether it's Harris-Walz administration or a Trump-Vance one. Right. So a split screen of the Biden and Trump foreign policy should give us a clear understanding of which one serves world peace better. Yeah, and like I said earlier, Israel has not expressly claimed their responsibility for the telecoms attack, which also claimed that the lives of 2 children. But last Wednesday, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant talked about a new phase in the war and announced the deployment of the 98th Division, comprising about 10,000 to 20,000 troops, to join the Northern Command of 4 armed brigades near the Lebanese border. Israel and Hezbollah have been engaged in retaliatory escalation since the commencement of the war in Gaza, October last year, and the Israeli military has now ruled out the possibility of a ground invasion, since its stated objectives is to keep northern Israel safe for people to return to their homes by decimating or obliterating Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. Hezbollah has also warned of a battle without limits, with Iran warning Israel of dangerous consequences after the Israeli strikes. And on Monday this week, Lebanon experienced its deadliest day in about 2 decades, with Israeli airstrikes killing about 500 people, which included 35 children and 58 women, and wounding about 1,600 others. And Hezbollah has stated that it fired multiple rocket barrages into northern Israel overnight, Tuesday this week, striking the Ramat David Air Base, the Megiddo Airfield, and the Amos Base, all domiciled within the Afula axis in northern Israel. And the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has told the people of Lebanon to leave the areas where Hezbollah is being targeted, emphasizing that Israel is at war with the Iran-sponsored group and not civilians. People are then fleeing their homes in Lebanon after receiving automated calls, text messages, broadcasts advising them to leave. Schools have been suspended. Schools have suspended classes, as it were, and they're being used to shelter those seeking refuge. While the healthcare system is overstretched as a result of the casualties from telecoms attack amidst airlines cutting flights to Lebanon. Hussein Mahmoud al-Nader, also known as Abu Saleh, a field commander of the Al-Qassim Brigades, Hamas's military wing, was also killed in the Israeli strikes in Lebanon. And the U.S. has decided to send some military personnel forward to the Middle East, in addition to the thousands of troops there already. And of course, assets well positioned in the East Mediterranean and the Red Sea. And the United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, has beckoned on Israel and Hezbollah to stop hostilities, with Qatar and Egypt condemning the Israeli strikes, and Jordan expressing solidarity with Lebanon, calling for the United Nations to take action. And Wang Yi, the Chinese foreign minister, said that he and his government strongly condemn acts that violate basic norms of international order, and told the Lebanese foreign minister on the sidelines of the ongoing United Nations General Assembly that, and I quote, China resolutely supports Lebanon in maintaining its sovereignty, security, and national dignity. We pay close attention to development in the region, especially the communication device explosion attacks recently, and we resolutely repulse indiscriminate attack against civilians. End of quote. And former United States Defense Secretary and ex-CIA head Leon Panetta is of the opinion that a threshold has been crossed and there is a risk of walking into a wider conflict. He ascertained that the United States will obviously continue to provide military supplies to Israel because of a shared bond, but also making it clear that an all-out war in the Middle East is the wrong time and the wrong place, with everybody paying a price devastating for the future. France, on its part, has called for an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council to address Israel's approach of escalation to de-escalate, with Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot telling the United Nations General Assembly on Monday that France once again calls upon the parties and those that support them to de-escalate and avoid a regional conflagration that will be devastating for everyone, first and foremost the civilian population. For that reason, I have asked for an emergency meeting of the Security Council on Lebanon this week. In Lebanon, as elsewhere, France will remain fully mobilized to resolve major crises that are disrupting the international agenda. And of course, needless to say that we are all walking on pins and needles here, and it remains to be seen if the United Nations Security Council will be able to thread the needle as the rubber meets the road. Yes, I will at this juncture give a brief chronology of Israel's hostility with Hezbollah, beginning with Israel's invasion of Lebanon in June 1982 in response to the attacks launched by the Palestinian Liberation Organization, PLO, from southern Lebanon amidst the then 7-year-old Lebanese civil war. Israel put West Beirut, where PLO was based, under siege then. And the PLO left for Tunisia after an agreement was reached. But Israel remained in Lebanon to support friendly groups in the civil war. And of course, the Sabra and Shatila massacre, in which the Israeli-backed right-wing Lebanese militia killed between 2,000 and 3,500 Palestinian refugees and Lebanese civilians in 2 days. As this elicited resistance, and several Lebanese groups were formed to repel Israel. And the one formed by Shia Muslim community was supported by Iran to repel Israel. And boom, Hezbollah was formed, drawing support from disenchanted youths and residents of the Bekaa Valley and Beirut's southern suburbs, which are marginalized areas with potent and strong, significant Shia populations, quickening the rise of Hezbollah to prominence. Then between 1982 and 1986, there were attacks against foreign positions, and notably, the 23rd October 1983, there was a bombing of several barracks buildings in Beirut, killing over 300 American and French peacekeepers. Then by 1985, Hezbollah, in conjunction with allied groups, forced the Israeli army to withdraw to the Litani River in South Lebanon. Israel declared a security zone along the swaths of the Israeli-Lebanese border, policed by the Christian-dominated South Lebanon Army, SLA, of course, an Israeli proxy force, supporting Israel's occupation of South Lebanon until its withdrawal in year 2000. So when the Lebanese civil war ended in 1992, Hezbollah contested parliamentary elections and won 8 seats in the 128-seater Lebanese assembly, and today has 62 seats in conjunction with its allies, and engaging in several social programs and deepening its influence in dominated areas. Then, the 7-Day War in 1993, which Israel codenamed Operation Accountability, which was a counter-response to Hezbollah fatally attacking northern Israel after Israeli attacks on a refugee camp and village in Lebanon. The conflict left over 100 Lebanese civilians dead and over 500 wounded in the wake of thousands of buildings destroyed. Then Israel launched a 17-day attack on 11th April 1996 to push Hezbollah beyond the Litani River, so they are not in striking range of Israeli targets. Then Operation Grapes of Wrath, as called by Israel, or the April aggression, as labeled by Lebanon, caused significant losses on both sides. And notably, the 18th April shelling of a United Nations compound near the village of Kana in southern Lebanon, where about 800 people were sheltering, caused the death of 106 civilians, including 37 children, and about 116 injured. 4 United Nations assigned Fijian soldiers of the interim peacekeeping force were also injured. And in July 2006, Hezbollah killed 3 Israeli soldiers, Wassim Nazal, Eyal Benin, and Shani Turugeman, and held Ehud Goldwasser and Eldad Regev hostage. The bodies of Goldwasser and Regev were later exchanged for 5 Lebanese prisoners. Later in the same July, a 34-day war broke out in which about 1,200 Lebanese died and 4,400 were wounded, mostly civilians, and Israel suffered 158 deaths, mostly soldiers. And in 2009, Hezbollah reviewed its manifesto to facilitate its integration into democratic national politics of unity and move away from sectarian pursuits, but still deepened its stance of resistance against Israel. And in 2012, Hezbollah interfered in Syria's civil war in support of Assad's regime. This move was, however, criticized by some of his former Arab supporters and also by one of his founding fathers, senior cleric Subhi al-Tufaili. However, Hezbollah claimed that the prevention of ISIS encroachment into Lebanon and the battlefield experience garnered, were positives of their involvement in that civil war. And of course, what we have today, talking about the conflict starting 2023, okay, where Hamas practically attacked Israel, and Hezbollah followed up on the second day, October 8th, 2023, firing rockets, into Israel. So I just gave you a brief chronological order of the interaction between Hezbollah and Israel, so that you can really have an understanding of the conflict, after having given the same background for Hamas, because Hamas is involved as a proxy of Iran in this war, and also Hezbollah too as a proxy of Iran, and not forgetting the activities of the Houthis in the Red Sea and the Suez Canal, and them having sophisticated weapons and causing disruptions to international trade. All this because I believe Iran has the funding, because it's a fact that Iran is their sponsor. That is indisputable. That is an overt fact. It's not something that is hidden. Okay, so and I believe that it's the sanctions that were actually removed by the Biden administration that has made Iran access funding, to be able to fund this what they call axis of resistance, and what others call axis of terror. All right, and that's why we have the kind of hostilities that we are having as at now. Okay, that is not taking in cognizance the historical background of the conflict. Okay, so I strongly believe that the Biden administration maintained the foreign policy of Trump as regards the Middle East, and especially as regards Iran, we will not be having what we have today, because under Trump, Iran was practically broke and could not fund their axis of resistance. But today, they have enough funding, and oil is also off the roof. Talking of price now, price of oil is relatively high in the market, so there is enough funding for Iran, and that can also be attributable to policies, domestic policies of United States. There was a ban on new leases on federal land in the United States, and the Keystone Pipeline project too was stopped. That's in Pennsylvania. All right, and of course the Russia-Ukraine war too. These factors impacted oil prices. And high oil prices means much bigger revenue for Iran. And much bigger revenue for Iran means their funding of this axis of so-called resistance. And what we have is an impediment to world peace. What we have is world peace being impeded, being undermined. And that is what we have today. At this juncture, I want to thank you for staying with me, for joining me today, and we will be taking a break to meet next quarter, because today represents the last episode of this quarter. Okay, and of course, next quarter we'll be returning with something much more interesting. All right, which will also reflect our studies, our analysis in the geopolitical terrain. All right, and please don't forget that at Armorgate, we are always ready to help and support your organizations to work optimally, creating frameworks and processes for optimization of resources and attainment of goals. You can contact us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram at Armorgate, and our phone number is +234 810 999 666. You can also visit our website at www.thearmorgate.org. Our email is contact@thearmorgate.org. I hope that the time we spent together has been worthwhile and rewarding, because I can assert that from my own end, it's been my pleasure. Until I come up again on your devices, it's bye for now. Thank you.